For years, gardeners have been told that making a perfect compost pile is the secret to healthy soil. Build it high, balance greens and browns, keep it moist, and most importantly, turn it often. But here's the truth. That advice has slowed down more gardens than it has helped. Constantly flipping compost doesn't just waste your energy, it causes nutrient loss, dries out the organic matter, and delays the very soil building you're working toward. What if the real key isn't in the pile at all, but in the soil itself? Today, we're going to uncover why the traditional compost myth is holding gardeners back and what you can do instead for faster, richer results. Turning piles burns up more than your energy. When you lift, flip, and mix a compost pile, you aren't just exercising your back. You're stoking oxygen into the material, which speeds microbial activity. That sounds good, but it has a hidden downside. The extra heat generated burns off nitrogen as ammonia and carbon as carbon dioxide. These are nutrients that should be feeding your soil, but instead they vanish into the air. Studies show that turned piles can lose up to half of their nitrogen content before ever reaching your garden beds. That means the more you turn, the more you lose. Not only that, but every time you disturb the pile, moisture escapes. Composting organisms thrive in damp, stable conditions. Repeated turning dries the material, forcing you to add more water and more greens just to keep it active. You end up working harder to produce compost that is actually weaker than what a slower, untouched pile could have made. Compost piles delay the feeding your soil really needs. Think about the timeline of a traditional compost pile. Even with careful management, you're waiting 3 to 6 months before you have something usable. And that's if you're turning it regularly. If you leave it alone, it might take a year or more. All that time your soil sits hungry while nutrients sit locked in the pile. Now, let's compare that to feeding organic matter directly into the soil. When you bury kitchen scraps in a trench or tuck them under mulch, decomposition happens right where the roots are. Worms move in within just a few weeks, microbes process the material right on site, and plants begin to benefit almost immediately. Instead of waiting half a year to spread finished compost, you actually start nourishing your soil as soon as you add the waste. The time you save, well, it translates into faster soil building and stronger crops. Feeding the soil first keeps nutrients where they belong. The big difference between a pile and soil first feeding is containment. In a pile, organic matter is exposed to air and weather. Rain can leach nutrients away, and heat can drive them off into the atmosphere. By the time you spread it, much of the original fertility has been lost. When organic matter is buried in the soil or layered under mulch, the earth itself locks nutrients in place. Microbes, fungi, and earthworms recycle those nutrients directly into the root zone. So, nothing is lost to runoff or evaporation. For example, burying a single banana peel 6 inches deep under a pepper plant provides potassium and phosphorus exactly where the roots can find it, without any of it escaping into the air. The same peel in a pile would lose much of its value before ever reaching the bed. So let's talk about some practical ways to apply soil-first composting. One simple method which is actually pretty effective is trench composting. All you need to do is dig a trench about 12 inches deep and 6 to 8 inches wide, either between your rows or along the edge of a bed. Then just fill that trench with kitchen scraps, things like vegetable peels, coffee grounds, and crushed eggshells, and cover it all back up with soil. Now here's a handy rule of thumb. Use 1 shovel of scraps for every 2 shovels of soil. In just a month or two, worms will have worked their magic and transformed that trench into a strip of humus-rich earth, ready for planting. Another approach you might want to try is direct feeding under mulch. Just chop your waste into small pieces and spread it in a thin layer around your plants. Next, cover it all with a thick layer of straw, leaves, or wood chips. The mulch helps hold in moisture, keeps any smells down, and provides the carbon you need to balance out those green materials. A ratio of 1 part food scraps to 2 parts dry mulch works well. Over time, the mulch and scraps merge into a living compost layer that continuously enriches the soil. For gardeners who want the least effort, designate planting zones that double as compost zones. Rotate where you bury your scraps each week so every part of the bed gets fed. Instead of spending hours turning a pile, you spend minutes placing nutrients exactly where they matter. The myth of the perfect compost pile is really holding gardeners back. The idea that you need to manage a compost pile like a science experiment is honestly one of the biggest myths in gardening. Sure, a pile will eventually produce compost, but it often costs more in lost nutrients, wasted time, and physical strain than it actually gives back. Soil-first feeding is, well, the faster, richer, and more natural approach. By just letting decomposition happen in place, you keep nutrients locked in the soil, feed your plants continuously, and you can totally skip the exhausting chore of flipping a mound of waste. So, the next time someone tells you to build and turn a pile, just remember, your soil doesn't need a middleman. Feed it directly and honestly, let nature handle the rest. For more proven soil-smart gardening methods, go ahead and subscribe to Hydrohaven and share this video with fellow growers. Together, we can put an end to gardening myths and really focus on what works.